Morning. Yeah, all right, thanks. You been here all night?
Yeah.
Yeah, how'd you get on?
Had a bream out about 5:30.
Okay, early doors.
Me, one of the other lads up there, he had a carp out last night. Wasn't that late though, about 10ish, I guess, something like that.
Oh, okay.
But that was it.
So they've not exactly been climbing the lines, but
Not exactly.
they're out there.
They are in there.
It's been one of those mornings where nothing's quite gone right for me. I've been clumsy. I took ages to decide on a swim, took ages to get a rod set up, but finally I've got my PVA bag rod up and running and a bait in the water, so I'm fishing at last, on one rod at least. As for the other rod, it's going to be the snowman rig. Little bleep on the right hand there, encouraging. It's going to be the snowman rig, and right now I'm going to take you back a couple of days to me in my shed getting ready for this session. Well, good evening everyone, and welcome to Adam's Fishing. You join me in my shed, my little sanctuary away from the chaos that is my house. I'm sure those of you who've got young children will understand exactly what I'm saying. And yes, important stuff out of the way first. This is a glass of wine. You guys who have watched a few of my videos know I'm usually a beer drinker, but I've recently discovered wine, and I really like that too, so I'm enjoying it. So why am I in the shed? Well, it's midweek, it's Wednesday, and life has been really hectic just lately. We've been pretty busy. My wife's a nurse and she works all kinds of odd hours. My work takes me all over the place as well. And between us, we've just been rushed off our feet lately. There's not been a moment for me to get out fishing on the bank for a few weeks, and I am itching to get out there again. Anyway, yesterday I plucked up the courage to ask the long-suffering wife if I could go out fishing at the weekend, and bless her, she did agree and said I can go fishing for the day on Saturday. She's working late on Friday, she's working all day Sunday, so obviously I'm going to need to be on hand for childcare and stuff like that, but Saturday she's off work and she's quite happy to take the lion's share and leave me to go fishing, which is absolutely brilliant, and I cannot wait to get back out on the bank again. I'd really love to get a bend in the rod too. I'm really missing getting out there and catching fish, I suppose. So it's not an ideal situation for me because it's a day session, and I certainly have found that my more productive sessions have been when I've been fishing an evening or an overnighter, better still, and I've been catching more fish that way. But you know, if I look back, years gone by, mainly my fishing was day sessions then, and I used to catch a few, so you know there's a good chance. And we've had some pretty awful weather this week, just consistent rain, and on Saturday it's actually meant to dry up and the sun is meant to come out a little bit, and you never know, that might just be the right conditions for a bite. So I'm really pleased to be getting down the lake. I'm going to be going down one of the larger lakes on my club ticket. It is the lake where I caught my 20-pounder recently. So there's a chance of a decent fish in there. A real problem with bird life. I have got my bird scarer now, my tufty torch, to try and put them off. And I will be using it if I need to, because my goodness, those things drive me wild. So I'll have that on hand. And the reason I'm in the shed on this Wednesday evening is I'm so excited. I want to get some bait prepared. I want to get some bait soaking ready for my trip down the lake on the Saturday. So let's have a look through my gear and see what I need to get sorted. So as a starter, guys, I keep one of these in the shed. It's one of these sort of does everything plastic boxes with lockable sides there. The idea being that will keep the vermin out, and so far it's worked for me. And in here is where I keep my stash of boilies. It's running a little bit low at the moment, if I'm honest, but I'm going to take some of these squid and krill flavoured boilies, and I'm actually going to use the bait cutter tool to actually half them, because recently I've been reading a bit and seeing a few videos online about people who chop up and crush their baits more to make them go a bit further, so that there's more food items for the fish to actually pick up. And I suppose when you think about it, if you cut a boilie in half, you've literally created 2 food items out of 1. You're almost doubling your bait quantity, I suppose. It might be a very simplistic way of looking at it, but it does kind of make sense to me. So I thought, why not give it a go? So I'm going to chop some of these bad boys in half and get them into my bait bucket, along with a fair share of whole baits as well. And then the idea is to use some cloudy krill liquid along with some water, just to soak these for, well, a couple of days until I get out on the bank. So here's the cutter tool. There's not much to it really. There's a blade in here and a plunger type thing, which pops out like so, and that's what forces the boilies through the blade section and effectively cuts them in half. So I'm going to open up this bag. I'm actually going to need to cut that. I'm going to open up this bag and then scoop up, what is it, 6-7 boilies maybe that fit in this tube, and then use the plunger tool to push them out of the bottom end so that I get some halved boilies out the other side, and they're going to be going straight into this bucket, which is what I'm going to use to soak my baits. That'll do, I think, and hopefully you can see in there I've got a real mixture of chopped and whole boilie. Sorry, the lighting in here isn't great, but there's a real mixed bag of chopped and whole boilie there, and in different flavours too. I've got some candy nut crush, some squid and krill, and what I'm going to proceed to do now is give these a jolly good soaking, so that hopefully they can absorb some liquid attractor, as well as being an attractive bait in their own right. So I'm going to start setting that up now, starting with some water, and then adding some cloudy krill liquid to disperse in that sort of broth that they're going to be swimming in for a couple of days. So let's get cracking with that. Okay guys, so it's mainly water in this bucket, as you just saw. I've heard differing opinions about whether this has to be lake water, whether this has to be mineral water, or whether this can be tap water. Well, in the end, I took my advice from a guy who I think is a Fox-sponsored angler called Tom Maker, who catches an absolute ton of fish. And I saw him on a video very recently, actually, saying he doesn't think there's any issue with just using water straight from the tap, and that's what he does. So that's what I'm going to do too. It hasn't caused him any problems with catch rates and that kind of thing. So it's water predominantly in here, but of course water in and of itself, apart from softening the baits, doesn't add a great deal of flavour. So that's where this stuff comes in. Some cloudy krill liquid from Sticky. In this instance, it's not cheap, but I don't know, it gives me a little bit of extra confidence, I suppose. So I'll give the jug a good shake and pour a bit of this on top, and hopefully it will all add to the flavour of these boilies. Now, it's not cheap stuff, so I'm not putting loads in. I want that little jerry can to last me a little while at least. But it's really, really potent. I mean, even diluted like that, it proper stinks. So I can imagine that that's just going to be drawn in by those boilies and by those chopped boilies, those half boilies, and then release when they're in the water. And on a busy Saturday down the lake, that extra bit of attraction might make all the difference. I really hope so. Time will tell. All right, nearly there. The last thing I want to do before I leave the shed this evening and go back into the madhouse is sort out some hook baits. Really, so that I can be fishing as quickly as possible when I arrive first thing in the morning at the lake. I think that early morning time, just around sunrise, which is when I'm hoping to get there, is going to be the best chance or one of the better chances of a bite. So I don't want to be faffing around fumbling trying to thread boilies onto hairs and thread little PVA mesh bags down the hook link and so forth. I figured I could do that now. I could put them in a sealed tub so that the baits don't degrade or anything like that. So when I get there, once I'm clipped up and I know where I'm going to be fishing to, I can literally just clip the hook link onto the quick change swivel, slide up the anti-tangle sleeve, cast out and be fishing. That's my plan anyway. So first thing I'm going to need is some rigs, and luckily I've already tied a whole bunch. There's loads in here, new hooks, sharp as you like, and if a fish does come along, a good chance of catching one on one of these. So I've got probably, what have I got here, maybe 8 rigs ready tied up, which is quite a lot I suppose, and as a starting point I'm going to take 4 of those, attach baits, attach the little PVA bags, and even put some glug on them, because that glug, if it dries over the period of a couple of days in the bucket without any real air getting to it, it'll just go sort of like tacky and gooey, and maybe even will leak off a little bit more slowly in the water rather than being washed straight off when the bait hits the lake. So I'm going to try and get everything as ready as I can now, ready for the big day on Saturday morning. So there we go, 4 rigs ready to bait up. Those of you who've watched before won't be surprised to see that I favour a longish hair on these hair rigs, because I like to accommodate a snowman bait, which is a 15mm bottom bait tipped with a 10mm pop-up bait. Each one of these rigs has an overhand loop at the end, to which I'll be attaching the quick change swivel, which is attached to my main line and my lead clip arrangement. But what I've done here is I've just slipped off the anti-tangle sleeve for now, because I'll be needing to thread on the PVA bags, the mesh PVA bags, in just a moment. So actually the first stage of things is I'm going to take the anti-tangle sleeves off of each of these rigs. I will be putting them back on, but at the moment they're coming off, ready for the next stage of things. So first thing is I need to attach some baits, some hook baits. So I'm going to be needing my trusty boilie needle. This is a Drennan one. I've tried several different boilie needles, but this has by far been my favourite. In fact, so much so that I've bought a spare one and I've replaced one, which I lost, because I really, really do like these. I find that they work really, really well. So I'm going to be needing some bottom baits first, just for ease of access. I've put a few of my squid and krill boilies in a little tub here, but there's nothing special about them. They are straight out of the bag, bottom baits, basically boilies. So baiting needle goes through the boilie, grab the first of my rigs, thread the boilie onto the hair, and then before this one is finished I'll be adding one of these, which is a 10mm washed out pink krill flavoured pop-up. Which goes on top. I'll just leave enough of the hair exposed there for me to be able to thread on a hair stop. So that's the next stage of things. So if I go to my tackle box, I've got a little tiny tub of bait stops which I've already prepared. So take my bait, pop the bait stop in, pull everything up neatly together, and that is my finished bait. But the rig itself isn't quite finished yet, because the next stage is threading on one of these PVA mesh bags to mask the hook point so that it doesn't tangle up or snag up on the cast. To do this, I'm going to need a different type of needle, and it's one of these. It's a gate latch needle. This is a particularly long one from Gray's Prodigy. I just bought it randomly off of the internet. If I'm honest, I could do with a shorter one. I don't need such a massive needle as this one, but that's what I've got, so that's what I'll be using. So I'll take this, I'm going to push it through the centre of one of my tied up PVA mesh bags, like so. I'm then going to take the rig here and attaching the needle to the loop, I'm going to pull the PVA mesh bag down the hook link until it reaches the hook. I'm then quite carefully going to tease the hook inside the PVA mesh bag until there is no hook point showing. The hook point is completely embedded in there. That will dissolve away, this will dissolve away, leaving the hook point free and a beautifully, hopefully, presented snowman rig attached to it. Last thing I need to do with this thing is reattach the anti-tangle sleeve here, ready to attach it to the lead clip system. So here's the anti-tangle sleeve. I use yet another type of baiting needle for this because it's not curved, it doesn't taper, it's just a one width boilie needle which actually goes through the centre of one of my anti-tangle sleeves really nicely. I can then use the needle or the barb of the needle to attach the hook link like so, and then just tease that anti-tangle sleeve over the knot of the overhand loop until I'm left with something a little bit like this. And as you can see, that leads down to this and this, ready to be cast out into the pond. The only thing that I'm going to do remaining with this to prepare it for the big day is use some of this krill flavoured glug. You notice there's a bit of a theme with the krill here, and I'm going to give the bait a bit of a glug with this. Now the whole thing doesn't fit in the top of the glug pot, so what I tend to do is hold it onto the top of the glug pot, give it a couple of turns, and when I remove that you can see all of the lovely glug is all around the hook bait, and that's just brilliant. I'm going to pop this into a bucket which I'll be sealing, and that'll keep just fine in the shed until such times as I'm ready to get out on the bank. So this is the bucket here. So hopefully that's given you an insight into how I prepare my rigs ready for fishing. I got 3 more of those to get ready, pop them in the bucket, seal it up, and then look forward to getting out on the bank. All right, well, it's time to put theory into practice. Here's my bucket. Let's see how those rigs look. Actually, that to me looks good. Put this on. And I'm ready. Alright, well, I was really thinking about just leaving those baits exactly as they are in the water, but I'm never 100% confident without some free offerings out there. At the moment, I can only see one duck in the vicinity, and he's going the other direction, so I think now's my chance to get just a little bit of bait in the water, and maybe just boost my own confidence a little bit. There's all my lovely soaked oilies. They look almost good enough to eat. I'm going to take a few handfuls out just so I can seal the bucket back up. And then just think very carefully before I catapult these out, because I really don't want to be descended upon. If I am, I'll have my tufty torch at the ready. It's high time I had a cup of coffee. Just coming up to 8:30. I'd say baits have been fishing in the water for about an hour now. I'm already sort of thinking about redoing something, but of course it's too soon. I need to give them a chance. I made a bit of disturbance setting up, and I guess it might take a little while for fish to feel confident moving back into the area, if they do move back into the area. I hope they do. So for now, to keep me occupied and to stop me from interfering with those rods, I'm going to try and make a cup of coffee using an on-the-bank coffee maker. My wife got me this about a year ago. There's a little cup there. And here's the device itself, which basically percolates coffee, and a spout up here then spits the coffee out once it's sort of ready, I suppose. Don't really understand how it all works, to be honest, but I'm going to try and remember how to set this up and see if I can brew myself a proper cup of coffee on the bank. Luckily, I've got the instructions. Okay, so I think I've established that coffee goes into this funnel device here. So, goes in here up to this valve, and that's the fill level. So, let's put some coffee out first. spilled a little bit, but not a lot. Okay, now let's get the stove ready. Well, I've got to say, it was a blooming long wait for a cup of coffee. But I have a cup of proper filtered coffee on the bank. So, it doesn't smell exactly as I would expect. Do you know what? It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not as good as when I make it at home with a cafetiere, with like the plunger thing. The flavour is different, perhaps a little bit more bitter. But it is pretty good coffee. I'm fairly impressed. I'm going to sit this, watch the lake, and now seriously think about redoing the rods, so I can have a lay down and feel confident that I've got fresh baits in the water. Maybe I'll even catch 40 winks and hopefully be woken up by a screaming take. Wouldn't that be brilliant? Well guys, I certainly had to wait for it, and the weather is just turning sour. I've got to go home any minute now, but I'm so glad I waited. This 13.5 pound scaly beauty is my reward. Absolutely over the moon with that fish. What a banger. Beautiful scales on her, beautiful. Let me show you the other side. There it is, in all her glory. Day session magic. Time to slip this beauty back and then pack my stuff up. Over the moon. If you've watched all this, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Cheers.